Hello and welcome to the Blueprint. I am so thrilled today to be joined by my very good friend, professional intuitive, Kristina Valenti. She is known as the Illumination Oracle. She does tarot readings, energy healing, meditation, and astrology. And when I first met her, I said she was one of the most multi-dimensional human beings I've ever met in my life. So welcome, Kristina, to the Blueprint.
Thank you, Marley. It is my honor to be here.
Yay. Okay. Well, I'm so excited for this conversation, which could go in literally unlimited directions. But we're going to start off with your spiritual awakening and when you first knew and understood the many multitudes of gifts that you bring to the world.
Mm, you're very sweet. It is, wow, it is and has been a journey, and a really deep journey. I would say that ever since I was a child, I was always deeply sensitive. And it really was, even something that people didn't always understand about me. And it was something that I hid from a lot of people because I didn't want to be seen as different. And so there was something about it in terms of, for example, I'd go on vacation with my family and I'd sense the energy of a place that we'd go to. And for example, I remember one time I was with my family in Europe, and my parents had spent all of this money to bring their kids to Europe, and they wanted me to go visit this castle. And it's like every kid's dream, right? To go see a castle. And we were in Belgium and it was supposed to be great. And I stood there and bawled. And my parents could not understand what was wrong with me. They're like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, "All I feel is death." Like I
Mm.
could feel the energy of the people that had died there. I could feel all of this emotion and trauma, really, pain that was associated with this building. And my parents were very confused. So there was always that deep knowing, but it didn't take until it took until many years for me to really start unraveling what that knowing meant and how to really understand it. So many years later, I had a spiritual journey that took me to Peru. I actually got stuck there during COVID and we couldn't leave. And I felt a lot of anxiety. And I'd had a profession that was made up of a lot of advertising and a lot of nervous system overload and many hours of work. And I didn't know how to relax. And so I taught myself to meditate. And it was in that stillness, in that space that where I couldn't move, where I couldn't leave, that I was forced to go within and get to know myself. So it was actually one of the most truly awakening moments. And I left that journey changed because not only did I learn to meditate, but I came back and my whole life shifted. And I actually started paying attention to my intuition as opposed to forcing it away because I was afraid of what other people might think of me.
If you want to help us get the word out on how we collectively imagine a better future, hit like and subscribe, and also consider donating to help us sustain the creation of the blueprint within and these important conversations. Click the link in our bio. You can donate anything on a pay what you can model, and we greatly appreciate it.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious, as I also felt the energy of spaces and had a deep fear of my parents' home as a kid, did
Yeah.
you sort of shut off that connection or that feeling, or did you ignore it? And how did sort of from when you were a child all the way through to that experience in Peru, how did you manage that? Because it seems like it was a pretty strong gift.
Yeah. I would say as a kid, it was almost like knowing that there was something that was up or wrong or just a little off, but you were afraid that if you said something, somebody would think there was something wrong with you, you know? So I kind of kept it in my back pocket. It was like, okay, I know this. I'm going to avoid this, but I'm not going to tell other people that this is what I feel. So it was kind of like this sense that you could feel into things. It helped me actually a lot in my career because the profession that I went into was brand strategy. And so what I would use is this inner knowing to help me understand things about consumers, about audiences, about brands as a whole. And it would help me kind of get the edge in the creative and the marketing that I was building, because I could understand things or feel into them that other people might have been like, wait, how did you get there? Like, that's an unusual connection. How did you make that leap? And it was just feeling how other people would feel. So it was like getting into the mind of the consumer and saying, how did they really feel? Like, what's the emotion that would drive them to make this purchase? And so by using that skill, I was able to use the energy of the emotion to create a really compelling creative brief and compelling strategy. But it also made me very sensitive to meetings. It made me sensitive to conflict in the workplace. And I remember I struggled to work with a lot of noise around me. You know, some people, there's a book called The Highly Sensitive Person. And if you read it, you can start understanding that it's like sensory overload, and people walking by, people coming to chat with me, like all of these meetings, all of the notifications, like it was overwhelming. But I trained myself that this is normal. Don't be too sensitive. Don't play into it. And that's kind of you learn to turn off that emotion a little bit, because it's not what the masculine world really values. And so for many years, I told myself, you're just being too sensitive. And so
Wow.
because of that, yeah, I I did not utilize it probably. I mean, I utilized it in spaces, but in others I kind of turned away from it. Yeah.
Well, it's like, sounds like, it's beyond empathy. You're empathizing with these customers with your brand strategy, but you're also almost like embodying their perspective or their intuitive, you know, um, tendencies.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
I know for me personally, that intuition and connection to energies and disembodied energies and spaces led me to drinking quite a lot
Mm,
when I pretty much went to college, and really when I started living on my own and being in spaces and places on my own and really deeply feeling uncomfortable. um and I know you've mentioned previously that you're a projector,
mhm.
which is a human design type, and you and I are different types, but would love to hear a little bit about sort of, I guess, being a projector and also how you managed those emotions and just managed in between from when you, I guess, kind of stepped into this acceptance of really who
Yeah.
you are at your core, taking you from, this ignoring it and, putting it aside for fear of how you might be judged to fully embodying it.
Yeah. Great. I love this. And I love your reflection too, Marley. I think that's beautiful. Of You're right. There's an element of numbing that alcohol actually helps, because it's like I'll turn off my sensitivity. It's almost too much sometimes. So I totally and completely understand that. And I did that too. I think as a projector, it's interesting because when I started looking at my human design, I recognized one of the most important things for me was my environment.
Mm.
And for me, environment was caves. And the workplace that I was in was a busy advertising agency, not a cave. But I started to make the connections. I did my best work when I booked myself a meeting room by myself, and I could be off in a corner with my headphones in complete silence, and no one would bother me. And so I started to learn and connect to that environment and know that I need silence to do my best work. I need uninterrupted space. And so by learning meditation and starting to connect to that silence, to that inner self, that core inner knowing in peace, and not and in stillness, and not actually have a whole lot going on, that's when I started to hear that inner voice and really pay attention to it. So it was almost like the need for silence kept coming up in my life. And I had probably been drowning it out for a really long time.
Wow, isn't that such a metaphor for, I think, what a lot of people are not allowing is really that inner voice and those inner shadows to really be able to be heard and come through in the parts of ourselves that we have intentionally looked away from. And, I love your intuition around listening to your human design. And I know you're really, really well versed in astrology as well. And I want to kind of highlight how I think both you and I use human design and astrology as essentially tools both of self-reflection, but also tools of being able to understand the larger energies at play within our world and how they might be affecting us as individuals and as a collective. But how did, I would love to hear about the process of your learning journey and
Mm,
where you went from, that realization and that meditation journey in Peru and where that kind of took you and how you've used these tools to essentially know yourself better, but also understand the world better.
beautiful. Yes, I love this. I think it's interesting. Before I get to really Peru, the stuff that led to Peru was pretty much a nervous breakdown. So let's I can't sugarcoat that. That was
Yeah,
part of
let's
the
hear it.
experience. So I've been working for a long time. I have a master's degree in business and I've been pushing myself. And for a long time I knew that something needed to change, but I wasn't sure what it was. And so I thought two things. One, I'm going to leave my full-time advertising job and start a freelance career. And then I'm going to work overtime for multiple agencies. So instead of working for one agency, now I'm going to work for multiple agencies. So I added more work. And then I was like, no, that's not better. I need to travel. And so oh, I basically booked, my husband and I booked a trip for 4 months to go to 4 different countries in South America. And so we're like, okay, we can take our computers, we can take our jobs with us. We're not missing out on anything. We're going to go. And this was kind of like my life turning event. They say that the the stars align, the wheels turn. That was one of the turning points because I came back a very different person. And the person that went there was hyper focused on work, on productivity, on what can I make? What can I produce? What is my output? And when I came back, I was like, this isn't working for me. I can't keep just making. And I think that that time in stillness, in reflection, really taught me we are not machines. We are not meant to continually just keep producing. We are meant to work with the energy and even some of the greater energies that are around us in terms of finding flow and finding what brings our heart joy. It's not supposed to feel like slavery that you wake up in the morning and you go and you do this thing that you hate from 9 until 5 and you come home, you drink, you go out to dinner, you pass out, and you start all over the next day. And so it just was this cycle that I had been trapped in for a really long time. And I realized I needed to do something that made me happy. And so part of this thing, what I realized in Peru was I was in this very beautiful meditative moment. And I had a rooftop that overlooked the ocean. I was very lucky. And I heard this. I am clairsentient, meaning I hear messages that I've always had really insane hearing ever since I was a kid and very musically inclined. And I just heard this voice. And it was like a disembodied voice. It had never happened to me before. But it said, the light to illuminate comes from within. You have been given a gift of light. You will use it to help others. And I wrote it in my phone because I was like, what just happened? Like, what was this thing that just came through? This has never happened before. And that was like, okay, I'm going to figure out what this means and I'm going to figure out what to do and how I can help people with
Wow, what a
this.
profound message. That's an amazing message. And that is so that I see all the through line to the name Illumination Oracle now and how gorgeous that is. And I know how multifaceted you are, both in your abilities, in your divine gifts, as well as in your delivery of those gifts to others. But what was the path from that moment, that you were led on? And I imagine there's a lot of synchronicities and amazing signs and stories, but would love to hear sort of where the universe and your soul took you.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Marley. I mean, oh, I'd say that at my core, I have always been a seeker, somebody that really likes to learn. I love to like pick up things and learn things. And it was actually really interesting because when we came, we didn't know when we were returning from Peru. We came back via a military repatriation flight. So there was no way of knowing, like it was shut off. There was no travel out of Peru. We had to basically book a single ticket between Lima and Miami and then somehow make it back home. But when I arrived home, and no one knew when I was arriving home, there was a box sitting on my doorstep. And I opened up this box, and there was a little note in it. And it was a friend of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a long time. And it was a box of tarot cards. And she said, I had a dream that you needed these, that there was something very important that would happen with these cards, and that this was an important tool for you. Here you go.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Like, what do I do with these? Because then the other part was I was raised very Catholic, and methods of divination, my grandmother read tea leaves. I actually have her cup next to me that I brought to this. So my grandmother had these like awesome little tea leaf reading cups, and it's just beautiful. It has all the signs of the zodiac around it and little symbols on the inside. It's cute. And so she would use these and read for her friends the tea leaf, very mystical. And she was always very mystical herself, very intuitively connected, and had some incredible prophecies that she even made that came true. Love her, miss her very dearly. But when I came back and I got this box of tarot cards, I was immediately like, am I allowed to touch these? Like, is this gonna, what is this about? Is this a Ouija board? Like, am I gonna get in trouble? And so I started researching and looking for classes and looking for teachers. And in the beginning, Marley, I will tell you, I picked up the cards and I'm like, there are too many symbols. There are 78 of these. There's no way I'm going to learn all of this. And I started building a relationship with the cards and learning, what does this mean? And so tarot ended up being my first step, because they are essentially a series of archetypes. And it really is a tool to help you know yourself. It's not, the cards in and of themselves have no power. You bring that power to them. And so that was something I started to learn, was like, okay, these are a series of symbols, just like astrology is a series of symbols, but it's using that framework to help understand who you are at your core. And so I sought out different tarot teachers. Some in the beginning, I was like, okay, I don't resonate with this. But then Teresa Reed is fantastic. She's written many books. She's actually here in Milwaukee. And then I had another mentor, Claire Burdell. She was incredible. She read for 20 years in London, and she became my mentor for several years. And so I developed a personal relationship with the cards, and I practiced every single day, sometimes for hours a day. And I was like, what do I need to know? Come on, guys, like help me out here.
Oh my
And
God.
it's a lot of practice, but essentially it's a language of symbols and archetypes that helps you connect to your intuition. So
Wow.
yeah.
And um, well, first of all, when you got the box, my crown was like on fire, the top of my head, and that's what I think is so important to share throughout things like the blueprint, our bodies and our intuition are always speaking to us and always affirming. Like, to me, when there's like a cosmic truth, I feel like something's like buzzing through the top of my head. And that moment is so chilling because that is so aligned with your soul's trajectory, And looking back, of course, it's like, of course it was. But in that moment, like the synchronicity, the symbolism, the signs, and having experienced your readings, your tarot readings, they are nothing short of, cosmic and magical, insightful, and beyond, beyond what I think we're taught is possible, in terms of being able to connect with people, beings, angels, ancestors that are so in service to our highest good and what we're here to do and our mission on the planet at this time. And I think it's all so divine, but what it comes down to was really, again, your allowance of yourself to hear what you need to hear and hear the messages. But also, this literally download came to me this morning, is that when we learn and we're seeking, like we're drawn to learn something, it's just our soul's remembrance. Because when we come to earth, we're wiped clean of all of our knowing, of all of our soul's, eternal wisdom. But when we are drawn to something, like you were drawn to the tarot, or your grandma to the tea leaves, or we're both, you and I think, are so obsessed with learning. And there's so many amazing modalities and ways to communicate with the mystical realm, right? But it is just your soul's remembrance of an aspect of yourself that is embedded both in your, in your energy, but also I think in your physical DNA. So I would love to hear more about sort of what your intuition specifically and the aspects of spirit that you work with, how those kind of come through for you, both for yourself and also like with your clients and within your readings. Like,
Love
what
that.
are the multi dimensions coming through for you?
I love that. So I also have to say that part of my process was understanding, yes, tarot is a way to understand symbols and put a name towards intuitive feelings. So tarot is really helpful with that. But I started to understand energy. That was really the next part. And so I started taking classes on energy healing, which then added a completely new layer that I add into my readings as well, because so much of it is sensing. And so clairsentience and sensing into something and feeling into that, that's really important. So energy work kind of tells you how energy not only moves within you, but also moves within different timelines, moves within different people, different connections. So understanding energy and that everything is energy, and that, the energy of our conversation has a beautiful light to it. And the energy, even within every living thing, is interwoven, is interconnected. And so that's what you start reading, is the energy. It's not that you're not reading the cards are helpful, but you're also reading the energy of people and their words, their intention, their pain. I'd often say that the first energy I was very sensitive to was pain. And that's what I feel first. So when I greet somebody and I hug them, or even I sit across from them on a Zoom call, I can feel into their field, and I feel what is the predominant energy in that field. And for many individuals, pain is the very first thing that shows up. And so as an empath, I feel their pain as if it is my own pain, which then is a whole nother topic in terms of energetic boundaries and how to, hold space for someone and listen to them, but not absorb that energy as well. So energetic boundaries are very, very important. But energy work was a layer that, when learning that, it made my readings a little different because I wasn't just relying on the cards to give me a symbol. I was reading into that person's energy. And then I was becoming more and more open to what was showing up in their field, which
Wow.
then expands into the possibilities. Because while tarot can show an option, you might not see all the options that are available to you. But having somebody that can sit across from you and lovingly hold space and view it from a completely different vantage point, kind of like a hawk would view, the world, they might see something that you can't recognize, and they can help you in a way that might be difficult to help yourself. So,
Wow, that is amazingly beautiful. And, I think that's what's wild is that the word energy has
mhm.
such a very limited connotation in our world. It's like used around electricity and heating and solar, and it's not used very proficiently in the context of our bodies and our spirit, and the idea that even that our bodies are 70% water, and like water
Mm,
is a magnifier of frequency. It's just so interesting, and I love that idea of sort of being able to see the multitudes of energetic possibility, both within people, within their aura, within their field, within the quantum possibilities. But also, I'm really interested to hear about the idea of seeing energetic possibilities between timelines.
mm.
And maybe could you explain a little bit about what that is like for you, what that experience is like, but also just like what timelines, the general concept of timelines for the average person.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that understanding timelines really also connected back to meditation. And it wasn't until I started understanding that all time basically is not linear. It is multifaceted in that multiple timelines can exist at once. And once I started recognizing this as a universal truth, it made it less about past, present, and future, and more like everything exists in the now. All of it, everything is available to us in the now. So I could meditate and go deep, deep into meditation. Seriously, people could slam doors and I would not come out of these deep, it's like a trance. It was wild ride. But I could meditate for sometimes an hour or more without budging. And I could set an intention to see a specific timeline or a specific space, a soul contract, something I needed to resolve. So for me, the first part, I think, was going into my own Akashic records, which people might talk about this, but like it's really your soul's records that exist that you can read, you can understand, you can tap into. Every single human has this possibility for them, that it's available for them. But it's understanding that you can figure out within that, what is it that's keeping me blocked from that lifetime, or what energy is available for me from that lifetime that I can connect to and call back to myself. So we often leave even pieces of our souls in different spaces. And so it's having that awareness and saying, I call that back to me. I call in that presence from all time, space, and dimension back to myself in my power now. And setting that intention and calling that to you makes it so. Like you'll come out of those meditations and you're different. And so that was the first part, is just knowing that that was possible and giving myself that permission to explore that without judgment.
Mm,
Yeah.
wow, that's so beautiful. And I've had the pleasure of having worked with you in a multitude of different ways, but also having experienced your energy work and energy clearing work. And you use modality called light language. And
Mhm.
so just can you talk about how you came to understand that gift and
Yeah,
how and it started?
for sure. So I I would say Ooh, well, again, going back to childhood, my parents always said that I could sing before I could speak. And to me, music has always been a modality that I would use to connect to spirit or source. And I always felt deeply connected. So even as a kid, I would cantor in front of my entire church at age 7 and sing in front of these giant congregations because I was like, oh, I'm doing it. I'm connected. This is where I'm shining. Yay, I got this. So I loved that. I think light language arrived organically is really the best way I could say it. I listened to other people's light language recordings because I was drawn to it. It was, again, just like the tarot cards, just like astrology. It was a modality that I found myself seeking. I ran across a meditation one day that included it, and I was like, what is happening? What are they speaking? How do I get that? So I set that intention and I said, I want this. I want to be able to speak and have it help others. And so oracle in and of itself is coming from the Latin root to speak. And so I wanted to connect into that. And so you have illumination, light, and you have oracle to speak. And so I even set that intention with my name that I was like, okay, I can do this.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
arrived it arrived slowly, and it felt like sludge moving through me, and it came out even unbeknownst to me. I was vacuuming, Marley. I was vacuuming my house, and I'm like speaking these words, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not actually consciously speaking this. It is coming through me. And that's when it started opening, and then I couldn't stop speaking it. And then I started learning that you can apply it for different uses, but it is an ancient remembrance, as you said, and it's connecting to a soul aspect of ourselves that is multidimensional and saying we are infinite. And when you connect to that and say, I call in that ability to help heal others through my voice in something that is infinite and of love, then it shows up.
I love that so much. And I've experienced your light language, and it's so funny. Recently, when you just did an energy clearing on me, I wanted to share that I had water come out of my ears, which was hilarious. Like that's never happened before, but the movement of energy is profound. And I mean, I was literally just laying on the ground. I wasn't dancing or doing anything to jar. It was pretty profound experience. And seeing other people speak it, and I've even seen my own child speak variations of it. It's wild because it's so similar, but also so different. And I notice myself when I listen to light language that it's almost like I know the words before they are spoken, but I can't say them. Like I feel like I'm like intuiting it before it comes out of your mouth, which is really wild and amazing, but it's a very profound experience. Now, speaking to the layers of time and the nonlinear, composition of time, which is a deeply indigenous belief and way of being, is almost this, circular time, or all that all time is, all lives are being experienced at once. um Talk about sort of what you see, because you've seen, for me and for others in my presence, other lifetimes. And can you talk about sort of the your gift of understanding past lives, or and even if that's even relevant to call them past lives,
Yeah,
and just how that process works for you?
sure. So I would say the foundation of it is always intuition. And intuition, I like to say, is a muscle. In the very beginning, it's not very strong. Like sometimes it needs to be built up over time. And the very first thing you will experience, and I experienced, was doubt. And so that kind of came first. The doubt comes first. But when you start treating it like a muscle and you start sensing into something, and then allowing it to show up as it will, you will see that you are right. And
Hmm.
so that is and there's different ways that your intuition will speak to you. So one, of course, is clairsentience. This is a deep knowing. It's kind of like a heaviness in your gut if you feel like something is wrong. Clairvoyance is really how I see past lives and is seeing it. So it shows up like little movies or little clips. It's like a flash of an image or a symbol. Sometimes it's a full scene, but it's like it will play out like a miniature movie reel, which is kind of cool. But even while my eyes are open, which can be freaky, I tell people like just stay open. I'm mostly clairaudient. So a lot of times I'll hear messages. That's probably the number one way, but also claircognizance, clear knowing. It's like there's a certainty about something, even if there is no visible proof. So those are kind of the different ways your intuition speaks to you. Past lives can show up in any of those. Like it can be something that you just, exactly as you said, you have a remembrance of something. Like you meet someone and you're like, I feel like I have known you in another lifetime. Or for many people, it's a skill that you just know how to do. So, for example, I had one reading, and it was a woman that I've known for a long time. And we were sitting there, and I'm like, I got this image of her as a child holding a rabbit. And I know this is a little, this is why it's so strange. She was skinning it and she
Mm.
was preparing it to cook it. And I looked at her and I'm like, okay, I got this as a clear visual, like a little movie script. And I said to her, you just know how to skin rabbit? And I used to say this with like a caveat of, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think you just know how to skin rabbits. I eventually took that out because I'm like, no, I started to trust myself. And she looked at me and she's like, yeah, I skinned my first rabbit when I was 4. And I'm like, it's a knowing. You know how to do this. You remember. It's a skill that's coming in for you. Now, granted, that might not be super helpful as a skill that you would now you don't necessarily, unless you live in the wilderness, but for the most part, there were other things that came in then specifically for her that were gifts that she would remember. And I've spoken with many people. Some of them, it's like a musical talent. For others, it's artistry. It often has a creative element to it. For some people, there was one woman I remember speaking to, and I just kept seeing boats, and I see them. It's like it shows up as a vision, and I'm like, something about boats or boat building, and she's like, yeah, I come from a whole family of boat builders ever since
Wow.
like my great great grandfather. And I'm like, you're meant to explore. Like that's what that's showing me. So sometimes it is past life, sometimes it's also present life, but either way, before I start any reading or any work with people, we're setting an intention together to receive the information collectively that is to that individual's highest good. So when you do that, it's kind of like a fail safe, of like, we're going to get the right information. So yes, it might be past life related. It could be present life. It could even be future life, but you're going to receive the information you need to know in order to move forward.
That's amazing. And I'm curious about when I know when I come pay you a visit, it's typically I have questions about a certain topic, about work, about actually, I talked to you the day before we recorded the blueprint for the first time ever. But as far as what people are commonly looking for guidance on, if you could share that, and also
Yeah.
if there's typical beings that do answer the call most commonly. Is it ancestors, angels, guides? Is
Mm,
it all the above? Is it different for everybody?
love that. These are fabulous questions, Marley, as usual. I would say most people come in and they have a specific worry, or they have
Hmm.
something that feels heavy, or they feel stuck. And they're like, I'm looking for guidance on a particular relationship, on a job, on a family situation, on how to move forward after this big thing happened. And what's amazing about tarot and about this work is that I am a completely neutral party. I don't know anything about this person's life. In fact, I'd rather you not tell me anything before you jump into a session, because what we do is, like I mentioned, setting that intention. We call in their spiritual team, your highest guidance, your well-meaning ancestors, all of your guides, your higher self, source, to be with us in this moment and impart this knowledge to us. So it's a very connected spiritual experience. I do not take it lightly. I actually take it very, very seriously. And I'd say people's guides show up in all different ways. Sometimes people know who their guides are, and I'll describe a woman or a man, and they're like, that's exactly what my grandfather looked like. That's exactly what my grandmother looked like. And they'll know who that person is. Or for some people, I'll describe an elder. Like, I see this person, they're wearing robes, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's my guide, blah, blah, blah. He speaks to me all the time. I have one client who's particularly connected to Archangel Michael. And I've recognized that presence in my life that I've called on when I need protection. And it shows up as this beautiful blue light, and it's ultraviolet blue. And so if I get this flash of like ultraviolet blue light, I know that I'm connected to that energy. So it's different for every person. And as you set that intention, sometimes it's even shamanic symbols. So I learned in shamanism, and I've studied shamanism and been bestowed the beautiful rites of the Munai key, which are these incredible rites that come from South America that are all about Munai, which is love, and ki, which is giving. And so they're incredible. But there are symbols that come through. So for some people, it is great eagle, condor. For some people, it is the energy of the jaguar. And you'll feel that. You'll feel it shift and change in the reading. And as you connect to that energy, people tell me as well, they're like, I'm sensing this energy. I feel this presence. And so it's what you are allowing yourself to be open to experience is often what you will feel. It's giving yourself that permission to connect with your guides and to be open to that wisdom as well, and the wisdom from your highest self.
Wow, that is it's so incredible to see. And I feel, do you find that most people have sort of this animal energy that is with
Mm.
them, generally speaking, or is that something that's sort of a special occasion visitor, if you will?
Yeah, I'd say for everyone, it's a little different. Like some people are deeply connected to animal spirits or animal guides, and so something will come up. Or, for example, I have one client that's deeply connected to owls, and it's fascinating because, for example, in my tarot deck, the very first time I think I pulled the Justice card, and there's a beautiful owl that sits on her shoulder. And I'm like, you have this wisdom that's coming through you. And she's like, oh my God, there's an owl on that card. And she's like, owls follow me. She's like everywhere. And she has sent me hundreds of photos of the owls that are present in her life. And she thinks it's a connection to her mother, who also felt that connection to owls. So it's wild. Like it shows up in all sorts of different ways. A lot of people, I have a little studio here in Milwaukee, and in the spring, birds come out, and people will tell me, if I have a window that's behind me as well in my studio, people will see birds flying as I'm speaking to them. And they're like, there's a cardinal. I've always felt that my grandfather was really connected to that cardinal energy, and they showed up. So depending on the person and their predisposition to what they connect with, different animal symbols will show up. But for some people, it's angels. For some people of different ethnicities and different cultures, I have friends that are Hindu that connect with Lord Ganesh. I have different friends that are Buddhists that have, so it just, there is, God is God in all shapes, sizes, and forms. And so it's remembering that and being open to that, however that shows up for that individual.
Wow, I wonder how much our own human beliefs play a part in
Mm,
the who comes through, the accessibility of
yeah.
those individuals and those energies. It's really curious to know how much is reciprocal versus,
Mm,
well, this is so incredible. And I wanted to share that, I've had such amazing readings with you. And
mm,
one recent, I think one of the most recent, you talked about my grandpa, who was like one of my best people. And you said, he's here to help you build anything. And
mm,
wood is very important to him. And he was a builder. He built houses with wood, and that's literally exactly who he is. So it's just so like beautiful and affirming too. It's interesting that, and I'm a little surprised that people come more out of worry, and
mm,
less out of maybe affirmation, but I can see
mm,
both, of
mm,
course. Um, that, I think sometimes we know the answer
mm.
to something and we don't want to acknowledge it, right? So we kind of need that backup acknowledgement.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it, Marley. I think that it's a little bit of both, right? Some of it's like I want to make a leap, I want to move elsewhere, I want to do something else with my life, but I'm afraid. Help me
Mm.
understand what that choice looks like for me. How do I get there? That's one. Another is I'm in a really great space. So much has happened. Now what? Now what do I do? And so that's another transition. So it's essentially just helping people navigate life transitions. And we're kind of always in transition, right? We're always on this path of continual evolving and learning to be comfortable with change. And that change isn't quite as scary as we might think it is. And so that's, I think, my goal, and I tell this to people, is that they walk out or they leave a session with me feeling better than they did than when they came in. And that it's helping them connect to their inner core, their guidance, their light that exists within them, and reinforce that knowing, because then they don't have to come back and see me. They have that for themselves. That's what I want, is
Well,
that everyone has that ability.
I can personally attest to feeling amazing after talking to you and feeling so good, but also, I want to say that, and I've talked to other healers and friends about this. It's like, even though I deeply trust my own inner knowing and I do trust my inner compass, I think we exist um in community and in friendship and in collaboration to also be able to mirror and reflect each other's greatness. And I think your gifts are so multifaceted in both being able to reflect as an individual, but also support bringing in my grandpa and bringing in my angels and my guides and all my other, my team, to help me feel that further support and further continue to align with my own knowing and gifts. But also, I think I know in myself, I identify when I have other energies that I have, gained on, not because I want them, but because they're out there in the universe,
Yeah.
and that you have a gift of also clearing those energies. And sometimes we
Mm,
need that help of another person to just get the slate clean. And yes, we can do it ourselves, but also I think sometimes we don't believe that we can, or we don't
mm,
believe in ourselves enough that we have that ability, and we need that other person. But regardless, I personally got Christina's readings for my mom and sister for Christmas, like
mm,
for my friends. I just think it's such a beautiful experience to be in your energy and to be
mm.
able to have that experience of your unique, amazing, multifaceted gifts shared with the world. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And truly, Marley, what you bring, which is so helpful to me, is your trust and your open heart. And is that's the biggest part. And you bring your own intuition. I think it is it's a collaborative relationship. It's like there is no hierarchy. It is bringing it in together and bringing in that understanding together, because what it's doing is it becomes a soul conversation, and you can tell when it shifts, and it's not so much there's no ego involved. It's more just sharing beautiful truth. And
Mm.
I think that that is not necessarily something that even we as a society really embrace. It's more there sometimes it's like, how much can we hide, or what masks can we wear to prevent another from seeing our soul truth? And so when you come with openness and like vulnerability and say, I need help with this, or I need a different perspective on this, or I really I feel heavy and dense and it feels like something's wrong in my apartment. How can you help me? That is openness. And that's a willingness to collaborate and to find a solution together that is so needed, you know? So I appreciate your love.
Well, and I think that's the thing is like our intuition, like my intuition has been saying you need to see Kristina like all week, you know, and I just haven't booked the appointment. But it's funny because our intuition tells us when we need those moments and when we need those, you know, that cleansing and that clarity. So, you know, I think it's always talking. Well, so true to the blueprint, you know, I want to close with one final question, and it's a
Yeah,
really important one, but
yeah.
it's really, what do you see with your unique lens and all that you know about energy and the multifaceted nature of this life? What do you see as the most optimal future for humanity and like the highest future for all of us? And I also want to commend that during every intention setting opening, you say, you know, in service to the highest good of all with harm to none. So what do you see as, you know, the possibilities for
Mm,
beauty?
that is such a beautiful question. Ah, I envision and I hope for a world where people are truly awake to their own light, to their intuition, and where people honor the light within them and they honor their sensitivity, not push it away. And they call that back to them as even a superpower. And I think it's where people move through life with purpose and not feeling like they're just doing the motions, but actually moving with intention and helping others with intention, loving with intention. And it's a world where we are sovereign, where every individual is in their own power and being led by their own truth, their own choices, their own knowing, and making those choices very purposeful. So that's what I envision, Marley. Like, and that is what my goal is. And if I can help that in any way, and helping people wake up to their true power is is my job here on this planet. So that's what I'm here for.
Are so good at it. And to bring, wow, thank you. That is an amazing vision. And that's what the blueprint within the whole precept of it was, that we all have our own inner truth and inner light, and it's all the answers that we are seeking are within us. And I think to bring it full circle to the start of your journey about, you know, really being judging yourself or feeling validated by your output,
Mm,
it's like when we're just focused on our output, we are giving to largely to a system that is no longer really in service to planetary or human well-being. And so that can feel really empty. But when we are focused on our input and focused on the beautiful wild landscape that we each hold within, and servicing that and nourishing that and really also bearing witness to it and
mm,
doing it from our heart, um, that will give us the answers that we need about where we can and need to go, and also what we do want to actually output in the world for, you know, in service to humanity, in service to the earth, in service to something greater than us as individuals. So thank you so much, Kristina, for being here. And would love to share where we're gonna put them in the show notes, but where can people find you? How can people book with you and all of the things?
Absolutely. Thank you. First of all, that was so beautiful. I was like tearing up a little bit. That was gorgeous. Thank you. You can find me at illuminationoracle.com or on Instagram mainly at the Illumination Oracle. Actually, just at Illumination Oracle. No, the is threads, I believe. So some of them have the, some don't. But yeah, I do both virtual and in-person sessions in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Virtual can be from anywhere. So you can call me and we can sit just like this from the comfort of your own home. So I'm very grateful that you had me on your incredible podcast, Marley. Your podcast has brought a lot of light into my life. Your journey has inspired me, and your work is something that is going to change the world. So thank you. Continue to keep doing that. Yeah.
Wow, I'm gonna cry. Thank you. Oh my God, that's amazing. Well, and I do want to just say I've had the pleasure of being in person and remote on Zoom many times, and there is no difference in either one's power and efficacy and beauty and excitement. So thanks, Kristina. You're a gift to this world and every other timeline and stratosphere and dimension and planet that you ever star. Okay, well, I love you and thank
I
you for
love you too. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.